Games are often praised for their general gameplay, story, music, or graphics. But the difference between a game being excellent and a game just being good is in the details. Gameplay mechanics are one of the details that can make a game reach great heights. We've listed 10 great game mechanics that are heavily underused by developers.
Necromorphs are going to come from every direction, and they won't stop coming until you take them apart limb by limb using strategic dismemberment.
Dead Space is a horror action game with great gameplay mechanics. It allows you to dismember your enemies, making them stumble and fall before you finish them off. Creative dismemberment is something that should be applied to other games as well. Imagine wielding a sword and cutting off an arm in a role-playing game, or destroying your enemy's legs with a magical spell. The VAT system from Fallout also falls into this same category, as you can target limbs to do damage, kill an enemy, or slow them down. It's nice to have this extra tactical layer in combat where there's a difference between a shot in the shoulder and a shot in the leg.
The Nemesis system creates personal interactions with your unique enemies. Every enemy will remember their encounters with you.
Killed you? Now you're back? Just my rotten luck!
The introduction of the Nemesis system in Middle-earth's Shadow of Mordor was the absolute highlight of the game. The idea that characters remember your actions is pretty great, but it's even better to be able to take down entire organizations by infiltrating them with the help of your enemies.
Meet my claw! Perhaps you don't recognize me, because now I have a claw where my hand used to be.
In Shadow of Mordor, you mind control them. But imagine how characteristics like charisma, persuasion, or just being a good fighter can make an enemy follow your lead and turn them against their own leader. This would be an amazing system for many role-playing games and games about criminal organizations.
In Echo, you must survive the strange workings of the palace. It studies everything you do, everything you are, to use it against you.
Artificial intelligence is getting more important as games are getting more complex. Enemies are programmed to counter certain moves by the player. This way, they take cover or try to flank you. But it would be even better if they would actually learn from your actions. In the action game Echo, you're basically fighting yourself, as the enemies you encounter remember the way in which you took them out.
They learn from me. They do what I do.
They behave like a hive mind and adjust their attack patterns to become less predictable. But it would also make sense for opponents in sports games and for enemies in shooters realizing you're reloading or grabbing a grenade. The idea of enemies that learn from the player is just very interesting. In recent years, we've been praising destruction in games. Take Rainbow Six Siege for example. It's great that you can shoot through walls and it's a great gameplay mechanic in that game. But we want real destruction. Red Faction Guerrilla's Geomod engine did this a few years back, as it allowed you to destroy everything in the game. This might not be good for every genre, but we want more games that make destruction a central part of the gameplay. Imagine being able to level a building in PUBG and kill all your opponents inside. Or imagine a Diva nuke in Overwatch having actual consequences for the game environment. All this would require many considerations from both a gameplay and story perspective, but realistic destruction is awesome and we would love to see more of it. In many games, reloading a gun is just a press of a button. You wait till your clip is full and you can start shooting again. Gears of War made this more interesting by introducing active reload. While reloading, you need to play a short QuickTime event. Based on the timing of your button press, your bullets would do extra damage, but the gun could also jam if you messed it up. This is an interesting way to add more gameplay to an action that's quite boring. It makes combat more challenging by adding another layer to it. Active reload would be a great addition to pretty much any shooter, and we don't know why it hasn't been copied more often.
Check your aim!
In video games, we often look at attributes. Think about things like strength, agility, and stamina. But what about your mental state? Are you stressed and panicking? Or just calm and in the zone? In Darkest Dungeon, you have a bar for your physical state, but also one for your mental state. Based on the amount of horrors a character has seen, he can start showing signs of stress.
Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles.
This mechanic has been used a bit in Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, as your sanity meter depletes when monsters see you. Emotional states make a lot of sense in role-playing games and horror games, but we never want to see Marcus Phoenix suddenly burst out in tears on the battlefield.
All right, time to introduce the new cog to the old cog, and clear these bucketheads out of my house.
Over the last few years, we've seen multiple first-person games tackle vertical movement. Mirror's Edge introduced parkour, but Titanfall 2 did it best. The smoothness of wall running and movement in general in this game is spot on. Sliding is a viable way to dodge bullets and rush enemies. However, it's the buttery smooth double jump and wall run that really makes you feel like you're a ninja. Moving around in first-person games can feel clunky, but Titanfall 2 proves it doesn't have to be this way. Great movement and mobility really set a game apart from the crowd.
We don't test the art.
私とお手合わせ願いましょう。
Most games are all about making your character stronger. You pick a new move, add some extra health, or increase your damage output by picking a new upgrade from your skill tree. Games are all about gaining power, but in Nier Automata, chipsets also come with negative effects. They can make you stronger, faster, and better, but because you can only equip a limited amount of chips, you will need to merge existing ones or even replace them when you need space. Every chipset relates to a certain aspect of the game. There are chips that influence your HUD, and removing the central processing unit will even kill your character. This sense of choice and cause and effect is great. It adds a lot of difficult choices to a game, and we need more of this. There have been a handful of role-playing games like Skyrim in which you level up skills by performing those skills, ranging from jumping to swinging swords and from cooking to magic. The idea that you will get better at anything just by doing it is simple, but applying this to every aspect of a video game can be overwhelming. It would be great if more games gave you XP for simply doing things. Developers can even combine this with the negative upgrade mechanic we previously mentioned. Swinging a heavy sword would make you stronger, but that would also decrease your speed and agility. The more we think of it, the more we believe this is a job for Bethesda and the upcoming Elder Scrolls 6. Many games let you create characters, which is great. However, it almost never affects the gameplay. You can walk around naked with pink hair and nobody in the game seems to care or even comment on it. That's why the character creator in Vampire the Masquerade is so awesome. The vampire clan you choose affects the gameplay in a huge way.
They're a bunch of malcontents. They get pumped up by rousing the rabble they keep around them.
The beautiful Toreador are able to socialize and seduce humans with very little effort, while the ugly Nosferatu will scare them away. The character you created dictates whether you spend most of your time in fancy nightclubs or need to hide in the sewers. It's a great feature that adds a lot of replayability to a game. And those were 10 great game mechanics we wish more developers would copy. Are there other mechanics you really loved in a game? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube and let us know.
Don't regret turning on you. So do your worst.